Welcome everybody to our new DevTalk. We've been doing DevTalks for a few months now, and we're doing them monthly. And this month we are going to talk about another hot topic that everyone's talking about and people have been asking us about, which is integrating ChatGPT into your app. Okay, so as you guys know, who I have here, I'm Gus from Back4App. We have somebody that needs an introduction, who is our master. Alex is here, and Allison is also here, which is one of the co-founders from Back4App.
Hey, guys.
Hey, you guys are going to have lots of support. We also have Charles here joining us with our support team. So what we're doing today is exactly that. Alex is going to walk us through exactly how to integrate ChatGPT into your apps using Back4App. And as you guys know, this is a fantastic way for all of us to add natural language processing capabilities into your applications. And this is something that everybody's talking about, everybody is looking at doing, regardless if you're a small company, a startup, a medium-sized company, or a large corporation. So Alex is going to do the walkthrough. And after that, we're going to have, as always, our Q&A session. So you guys feel free to ask us any questions you'd like. Also, if you guys are having any troubles with anything, we can also do a troubleshooting lesson like we did last time for our last Dev Talk that everybody saw. You know, if a lot of people worried about, oh, is ChatGPT going to take our jobs away? And last time we saw that, you know, that's not happening at all. All right. Like I said before, our chat window is open. Also, the Q&A window is open. So if you guys have any questions, please send us through, especially if you can do it through the Q&A box. It's going to be a lot easier for us to answer them. And we'll answer them as the presentation goes on, as the walkthrough goes on, and especially at the end of the walkthrough. Sound good? All right, so without further ado, Alex, go ahead, take it away.
Hey, hello everyone. So good to have you all back here. I really enjoy doing this kind of events. And today we'll try to show you how to integrate ChatGPT into your app. Now, on previous web talks like this, we showed how to use ChatGPT to build the app for you, but many of you asked for a way to integrate a ChatGPT into the app so it could, for instance, talk back to your end users. And this is exactly what you're going to see today. Now, once again, we'll be doing this in JavaScript, but all the concepts apply to any languages that you're working with. And I want to go a little bit more theoretical today because there are so many things on ChatGPT that we have to see prior to starting coding. And I have to ask you to excuse me for two main reasons today. First one is because of my voice and my coughing, because I got a cold, so I keep coughing all the time and my voice is not very good. And second one is that the delivery guy is scheduled to deliver some packages here at my house, so it's possible that I'll have to jump out of the webinar for a few moments if the guy arrives. I have no other option, unfortunately. So with that said, let's start our webinar. So let me share my screen with you guys. And there you go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we can see
it. Good. So this is the platform for OpenAI website, and this is the place where you're going to set your API keys, but there are a few other things that you can see in this screen. The first one that I want to discuss a little bit about is the rate limits, and depending on the model that you use, you'll be set different limits to utilization of the APIs. Today we'll be using GPT 3.5 Turbo, and as you can see, you have other versions of that as well. And you have all the way down to many different models that they use. And the main difference between among all these models is how they are updated. So on some of these are outdated, some of those are newer and more updated. So be sure to check the definitions of the models that you are trying to use. I was working on a different project a few weeks back, and I was using DaVinci, which is quite old in terms of updating. So, and this one, Taxi DaVinci, I was using. And right now we are using ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, which has a few limitations. The first one is the tokens per minute. At every single call that you do to ChatGPT's API, it consumes some tokens. You're given some tokens to work with, and if you have a paid account like my account is, you have a higher number of tokens that you can use. And the calculation for using tokens involves both the prompt that you do and the answer that you get back. So you really want to use your tokens wisely, because if you start using too many tokens, it will wear this tokens per minute threshold very, very fast. Also, you have a request per minute, which is the number of actual API requests that you do. So this is also something that you want to pay attention to, because if you start to making way too many requests, especially as your application grows, you can wear up this threshold very, very fast and hitting some limits. So if you want to know more about these models and to decide which one you should use, here they have the models definition, and I really recommend that you read through this documentation. It's up here in documentation. If you expand models and then you go to model updates, it will tell you exactly when the discontinuation date is, and the replacing model that will replace that one. And well, it's very well documented, so I really recommend you to read through this documentation to define which one you're going to use. Once again, we're going to use GPT 3.5 Turbo today, which is a very updated one. And also, as we're going to write the code in Node.js, specifically, which is a framework for JavaScript, we'll also be using a few modules for that. The first one is readline. Readline allows you to read the inputs from the keyboard of the end user, because today we will be building some kind of virtual assistant, or a virtual attendant to a business. And this will allow me to interact with that user, with that virtual assistant. And then we will also be using completions, which is a NPM module that does the interaction with OpenAI. Now, you could use the OpenAI NPM package. If you go here and type OpenAI, you see the official one. The only problem I got with the official one is that mostly work with streams, which is way too technical for a webinar of 1 hour. So I decided to work with this completions one, because this encapsulates all the responses and makes it very much more easy for us to interact with the API. Now, once again, the concepts are exactly the same if you decide to use the official one, but if you're not that experienced, especially working with streams, I really recommend to try out completions. It's public, open source, and free, so you don't have any kind of limitations on it, and it will make your work very, very much more easy, as you don't have to work with streams, which can be, once again, troublesome. Now, we'll be using a prompt that I got from deeplearning.ai, which I think it's very, very good. And they have a lot of courses, free courses that you can join in here and watch. And I really recommend that you go to their website, because it is very good. I have learned a lot from here. Now, with all that said, it's time for us to jump into our Visual Studio Code and start producing some code. So here I have my Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, it's totally empty. So we're going to create a new project. So I'm going to click here and click Open Folder. And into my desktop, I'm going to create a new folder, and let's call this virtual assistant. Create and click open. Now, with that done, I'm going to open a new terminal, close this down, and we're going to install our npm modules. I'll do that by typing npm install completions. Enter, and hopefully this will work. It might take some time depending on your internet connection, and it seems we are good to go. And we can also create a index.js file that you can just go to File, New Text File, and save it as index.js. Now we have everything we need in order to proceed. So let's start by trying to read the inputs from my keyboard. Remember, you can use most of this code in Cloud Code as we support NPM modules and JavaScript. So if you want to run this in the back end of Back4App as your Cloud Code functions or perhaps some cloud jobs, you can do that very easily. I'm doing this on console today because it's faster for you to see the results, but it works like a charm from Back4App as well. So let's start. Const readLine equals require readLine. This will use Node.js ability to read the input from my keyboard, and we're going to test this very, very soon. So I'm also going to create a main function that I'm going to be calling. So const main equals async, and I'm going to arrow function this to my code, and then I'm going to call my main method. Now, just to test this out, let's put a console log hello world here. Hopefully this will work. Node index.js. And hello world, it's working. Now it's time for us to start reading the inputs from my keyboard. So let's open a few lines in here and create a get. Oops, not here inside the main file, main method. Let's remove this and create a get input function here that will be using readLine to read the inputs. So we're going to do const get input equals. I'm going to arrow function this to my code once again. So creating a function, we're going to return a new promise that we're going to resolve. And I'm going to arrow function this to my code once again. And by the way, if you don't know exactly what I'm doing here, you can always check out the documentation for Node.js. I'm pretty much specifying that I want to get my input. I'm sorry, I just got this totally wrong. We're going to do this later. I have to first configure the readLine method. So let's start from the very beginning. So const rl for readLine equals readline dot create interface. The create interface will tell readLine to read from my standard input and standard output, which is my keyboard in this case. So this will take a JSON object, and we're going to do the input as our process dot standard input std in, and our output will be our process dot standard output, so out. Now it is correctly set. And once again, if you don't know what I'm doing exactly here, you can always check the documentation because this is a official module for Node.js. It basically only reads the input and output from my process standard input and output. And with that done, let's try to write something here. So now we're going to write the get input function. So const get input equals. This will be a function, and I'm really having a hard time with this keyboard. this will return a new promise that's going to get a resolve that we will arrow function to our code. And every time I have this promise resolved, I want to resolve something that I will call answer. Oops, it's over here. Oh, come on. So the way for you to interact with the read line is to a method called question. You put a question and then you wait for a input back. So that will be done like this. Readline.question, and then you can put your question. I'm just putting a major sign here, so it will work pretty much like a terminal, like this. And then I'm going to get an answer. The answer will then be arrow function to resolve my answer. There we go. Now this should be working, and we can try to run it. So let's make some code. Await, get input. Let's try to run and see how it goes. So resolve answer. I got some unexpected token. Why is that? Yeah. Oh, I've missed the function, the arrow function there. There we go. Now every time I type something, hello, you see this was resolved into my application. So if I'm not wrong, to cancel this out, you have to do Control X and then Control C. Yeah, that's it. So now we got our input and we have to handle it. So let's try to create a new method in here and handle this input and pass it into ChatGPT. So const handle input equals async. This will be making asynchronous calls. And let's open brackets like that. And I think I missed a semicolon here and also a semicolon there. Let me know in the comments if you are a semicolon person or not. Mostly of the times I use it, but I forget to put them a lot of times. And then we're going to do a try catch. And finally, block here. In the finally block, we're going to close the read line and then exit the process. So readline.close and process exit 0. So every time I hit the finally block, I'll just close the readline stream and kill the process. And if I get any errors, we're going to console log error. And then, oops, error. This should print out our logs. And I think this should cover most of the situations. And now it's time for us to start using our completions module to try to send everything that I type back to ChatGPT. So we'll do that by creating a while true loop into this try block that will be running until I hit Ctrl X, Ctrl C. This will be an infinite loop, which means that I can interact with the API as long as I want. So I send a message there, I get a response, then I can send a message back again and go back and forth until I have it working the way I need it. So while, oops, and I'm having a very hard time with my keyboard today. You gotta be kidding me. While true, and in here we have to create the instance for ChatGPT. Once again, we're going to use the completions module. There is a lot of documentation about it here on their GitHub, including all the properties that you need. And we are going to use this create chat part over here. Back to my Visual Studio. I'm going to create it in here. So now, some of you might be asking yourselves why I'm using it inside the while true loop. It is because at every time that I have to resend the messages, I can send a new prompt, or I can send a history of messages, so ChatGPT has some context to work with. If I just create it once and send a new prompt to it, at every new iteration, it will get lost of the messages that it previously had. So there will be no flowing conversation. Every single time I send a new prompt, it will be a new conversation being started. And when I use uh, I totally forgot the word in English, sorry for this. So a new parameter for this create chat, I can send in some context with a chat history, and this will allow me to proceed a conversation even if I do multiple calls to the API. Now, when you are on ChatGPT website, you keep on the same context, so as long as you are in the same chat, it will always remember what it previously answered. But when you do a API back and forth communication like we are doing today, every single call does not have the full history. So we have to keep appending the context and the history so ChatGPT knows what we are talking about. So let me just put this here, save, oops, come on, there we go. Now, once we have this, it's time for us to create a new response object. So const response equals await chat, which is the instance we just created, dot send message. And then we are going to send in the input that we just captured with our get input method. So await get input. We're just getting what we get from the keyboard and sending it back to ChatGPT. And then let's print out that response. So console log response. And there is an object in the response. Response is a complex object, so we have a parameter in there called content, which is ChatGPT's actual answer to our question. So let's try to run this. Hopefully it will work. Oh, it's not, because I have to pass in the OpenAI API key that I have created. Now you can create this API key back here. If you go to API keys, there is a place for you to create other ones over there. I have one saved here with my code, so hopefully if I just paste that in, this should probably work. Let's try once again. And it should say something to me. Oh, of course it won't, because I created the method, but I didn't call it. So let's call it hello input. Create chat is not defined. Why is not defined? Because I did not import our modules. So we will do that right now. So const, and once again, having trouble with my new keyboard, create chat equal to require completions. Hopefully it will work now. And I have two queues over there. There we go, there's our prompt. And if I tell hello, hopefully, hello, how can I help you today? And my camera just flickered. Can you guys see me? Oh, there we go. Let's try a different prompt. So, tell me a joke. There we go. It's a, now let's ask what is funny about this joke. What is funny about this joke? This is important and is part of the context I wanted to show you. I created a connection to the API and asked it to tell me a joke, which it did. But later on, this connection was closed, the API request was finished, and when I asked it, what is funny about this joke, it said that I need to give it some context because this third API call has absolutely nothing to do with the second one. So it lost its history. And this is why we need to provide a way to, excuse me, to ChatGPT to have history and context on what it is talking about. And we're going to do just that. And this is something that you're going to learn if you do the, where is it? Courses from deeplearning.ai. They have good, very good content in here showing you how to work with context. And to tell you a little bit more, I'm going to paste in some context that I have over here, which is pretty much extracted from the courses they offer there. And remember, it's all for free. All you have to do is to join their website, register in, and you'll be able to get all the content. And this is the JSON object containing some context. They use it in Python there, but I rewrote this for JavaScript. And we're going to work with a few properties in here. The first one I want to tell you about is the role. The role lets you specify a few things when you're doing your prompts. And the first role you're going to see is system. You can think of the system role as some comments that are not transparent to the end user, but that ChatGPT knows about it. So imagine ChatGPT is an actor, and right before the actor joins into the stage and starts the play, the director comes and gives him some instructions. You're going to do this, and you're going to do this exactly like this, and this, and this. So the public watching the play will not be aware of those rules that the director gave to the actor, but the actor itself knows the rules and will apply, even though it will not tell the public about the rules. So the system role is exactly like that. It's how you instruct ChatGPT in order for it to operate in a certain way, to give it some previous content, and this will not be displayed to the end users. So it's just so ChatGPT knows exactly how to proceed. And in this prompt that once again I just shameless copied from deeplearning.ai, it is going to create a order bot that will provide some friendly talking to a potential customer of a pizza place. So it includes the menu for the pizzas over here, some toppings that you can choose, some sauces, and some drinks as well. Let me put my do not disturb once again, or some people will start sending messages. There you go. So remember, none of this is going to be sent to the end user. It's just so ChatGPT knows how to behave and where to start. And we're going to pass in this context in a property in here. So let me put, not here, is in the chat. Where is it? There we go. In a property called messages. And we're going to keep updating this messages object. If you notice, this is an array. So I have some brackets here. And we're going to keep adding some other rows that I'll tell you in a second. So my object is called context, so messages context. So now it has some context to start with. Let's see how it behaves, even though I'm not going to do anything else besides giving it this first row to start with. So Control X, Control C, clear, and node index.js. Now, if I just tell hello, notice it changed its behavior. It now assumed that is the virtual assistant for the pizza place. I even told it, and this is done by myself, to put a little robot icon there so I know when it's replying. But once again, we just set the initial behavior of it. It has the menu, it has the prices, it knows how to behave, but it's losing all the history. So if I just tell it, I want to buy a pizza. Look what happens. It just welcomed me again. Why? Because it has no history. It lost all its previous history of iteration with me as this first API call ended. And this is why we need to keep updating this messages array, giving it more context and passing in more of our conversation so it knows where it stopped and how it should proceed. And we'll have to do this in two places. The first one is every single message that I send to ChatGPT must be included into this context object, which remember is an array. So every time I resolve my answer over here, when I read it from the keyboard, I also want to add it to my array. So we're going to do that by typing context, which is my array object, dot push. Push is how you add objects at the very end of an array. And in here, we will also keep adding some other roles. And the roles for the end user side is called user. So we're going to create a JSON object. The first parameter, exactly like we did over here, is role. So role. And since I am the user interacting with ChatGPT, we're going to put the value user. And the second parameter is the content, which is exactly what I'm talking to ChatGPT. So we're going to put content, and the value will be what I just typed in. So if I put it in here, save, Control X, Control C so we can stop. And if I run this again, I really don't expect this to change much as I'm just adding what I tell ChatGPT. We have also to add its own responses so it knows where it stopped, but let's try it out. So hello. It welcomed me. So I would like to buy a pizza. It was able to understand what I talked to it, but it has no history on what it answered me back. So at some point, this can work until to some point where it can answer what based on only what I just said. But in order for it to be a conversation, it also needs to have history on what it said itself. So we're going to append to this context object the ChatGPT responses as well. So every time we do a console log here with the response.content, I have what ChatGPT say to me, which we are printing over here. So all I'm going to do is, prior to printing, I'm going to add that to the context object once again. And in order to tell ChatGPT that this is his own message, its own message, we have a different role. The role for ChatGPT is assistant, so it knows that is an answer. It gave it to me and not something that I say to it. So context dot push. Remember, push is how we put new objects into an array in JavaScript. A role will be assistant, and the content will be the response dot content. And I mark this way too much. Save it. Now, if we exit this, oh, here, now it has all the information it needs to start. So how it should behave, how it should answer me, including the instruction to put the little robot in its answers. It has the menu with all the prices. It has the instructions to be friendly and talk back to me. It has the history of messages I sent to it and the history of messages it sent to me. So now we have everything you need to keep on a conversation. So let's try to run this again, and let's try to go as further as we can. So, hi. Hello, welcome to our pizza restaurant. How may I assist you today? I would like to buy a pizza. Oh, and I spelled pizza wrong. So great, I'd be happy to help you with that. Which type of pizza would you like to order? We have pepperoni, cheese, and eggplant pizza. I want pepperoni pizza. Excellent choice. Would you like to add any extra toppings on your pepperoni pizza, such as cheese, mushrooms, sausage, Canadian? Oh, they have AI sauce, so please add AI sauce to it. Noted, a pepperoni pizza with AI sauce coming right up. Is there anything else I would like you to order? Do you have fries? Yes, we do have fries. I know because I just read up there on the menu. So would you like to add an order of fries to your order? That's $4.50. And where is it? There we go, fries $4.50. So yes, please. Perfect. Any order of fries in order to your order. Is there anything else you would like to add? What do you have to drink? We have Coke, Sprite, and bottled water. Which one would you like to add to your order? I would like a bottled water, please. Noted. Is there anything? No, that would be all. Great. So to summarize, you ordered a pepperoni pizza with AI sauce, an order of fries, and a bottle of water. Is that correct? That is correct. Wonderful. Now I just need to ask, would you like to pick up your order or have it delivered? I want to pick up the order. All right, your order will be ready for pickup. Is there anything else I can assist you with? Now let's try to see if it can sum it up all together. That would be all. How much is it going to cost? The total cost of your order, including the pepperoni pizza with AI sauce, fries, and bottled water, comes to $21.45. Will be paid with cash or card. Let's say card. Perfect. We accept card payments. Please provide me with your card details and complete the payment. I'll take my card with me when picking up the pizza. Noted. You can pay for your order when you come to pick it up. Just let us staff to know and we will assist you to help with the payment. Enjoy your pizza and have a great day. Great day for you too. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for choosing Pizza rest on, have a fantastic day, and see you soon. So as you can see, guys, it's very, very easy to implement as long as you know what you're doing. And once you understand this concept, which is the most important part of today's webinar, sending it a role for system, giving it the context to start with. Remember, this is not part of the conversation. This is something that ChatGPT will hold to itself in order to operate properly. Then keep adding your own messages as role user and then the content as the prompt that you prompt in. And keep adding the ChatGPT's responses as role assistant and content as its responses. You'll be able to track a whole conversation and go as far as you can possibly need. Now, if you give it context enough to start with, in this case, it's just a pizza restaurant, but it could be pretty much anything like a technical support helper, or perhaps a more complex business trying to give directions on how people should act in order to purchase items. It would work like a charm. All you have to remember is if you have these three roles set up correctly, it's very, very easy to achieve what you're looking for and integrate ChatGPT to your app. Now, today I wanted to make this back and forth talking to it because in most of the times when you have interaction from ChatGPT into your app, it will be your end users talking to it, thinking they are talking to some person. And once again, this is 100% compatible with Cloud Code. You can just pretty much copy and paste all this code into Cloud Code and it will probably work. Of course, you have to create the Cloud Code function so we can call it. And you can ask ChatGPT to generate those functions for you. But once you get these concepts working, it's very easy to embed ChatGPT into your app to get pretty much any goal that you want. So this is pretty much the code that I wanted to show you for today. I think we can open up for questions now, Gus. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely, Alex. Thank you very much. That was very insightful. And we're going to get to everybody that's asking, we're going to get all the recording and all the material that Alex referenced. We're going to get that out to you guys either tomorrow or by early next week. And we'll send that out via email and get everything in the same email. So, just to make it easier for you guys. A couple of questions here, Alex, that some people emailed me. How do I authenticate users in my app when integrating ChatGPT with Back4App to ensure that only authorized users can access the chat functionality?
Right, this is quite a curious question because yesterday we published a video about that in the channel. So how to ensure that only authenticated users can run your Cloud Code. Every time you call a Cloud Code function, you have in the request, if it was done by an authenticated user, a object called request.user. So if you can read this object from the request, it means the user is authenticated, and then you should proceed to execution of the code. Now, if you get an empty object instead, it means the call was made not authenticated, so you should just probably throw an error or return some other results without executing the code. So it's very easy to do. Be sure to check our YouTube channel because we have a specific video about that published just yesterday.
All right, great. Now, another question is, where do you recommend storing the ChatGPT tokens?
I'm sorry, can you repeat, please?
Where do you recommend storing the ChatGPT tokens?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, when you say tokens, you mean the tokens you use for calling the APIs? Or did you mean the API keys? Because the way you ask it makes me think you said the API keys. And if it is the API keys, you should probably store, if it is in Back4App, in a environment variable. Actually, in your own machine, it should also be in a environment variable. I just put in a string like this, which is very insecure. Don't do that. because it's easier for us to see what I'm doing. But I'll probably make this unavailable right after the webinar. But the right place to store this is in an environment variable. Now, if you're talking about the actual tokens that you need to use to call the API, you don't really have to store those. You just set the number you want to spend in a single call, and ChatGPT will respect that. So you don't have to store anything. You just tell how many you want to use per API request, and it will try to fit into that number.
All right. Next question is, can I use Back4App's cloud functions to interact directly with the OpenAI API, or do I need a separate backend server for this integration?
No, since we are using NPM modules and Back4App is compatible with NPM modules, you can call it directly from Back4App Cloud Code. All you have to do is to install the module, be the completions one, be the OpenAI official one, into Back4App. We also have videos on how to install NPM modules in the channel, so be sure to watch that. And then you can call it directly from Cloud Code, just as I did from my console here. It works quite well. It's very stable, it's very fast, and you don't need to pay any other extra services to run that.
All right. Next question is, how can I optimize the performance of my app when making API requests to ChatGPT? Are there any best practices that you know of for reducing latency?
All right, latency is always something that you have to worry about, especially when consuming third-party services, and this is something I cannot stress enough. We have many people that complain that their app starts to get slow once they start consuming third-party services, and this is mostly because Back4App and all the systems need to wait for a response from an external server, which we do not control. So it could go all around the internet to get a response and then back, and this can take a while. So there are a few strategies you can use. For instance, if you have common queries that you need to run somewhere else, perhaps you could implement some caching mechanism. And so instead of going all the way every time and getting a new response, you should check if you already have that response locally. It will be much faster. And you should always ensure that you have optimized ways to consume third-party services. A very common mistake is to send or to retrieve too much data that you don't really need, what we call overfetching. So be sure to minimize the number of data that you bring at every request. This will make your code much more efficient and your response much faster. Now, if you're still having some issues in this respect, please get in touch with our support channel. They can try to manually set some routes that can accelerate your application, but this is an extreme scenario. Most of the times you should be able to fix it yourself by caching and optimizing your requests.
Right. Now a couple of questions regarding APIs. Are there any limitations on the number of API requests that I can make to ChatGPT through their API? And how can I manage and control the usage to avoid exceeding the limits?
All right, so as I just showed there in the models, where is the models? I think, there we go. So depending on the model that you choose, you will have a limit of tokens per minute and requests per minute. So you need to watch for those, especially if you're working in production. Remember, this can scale very fast if you don't take care, and if you have, for instance, too many users. And you can check the usage here on your platform .openai page. If you go to usage, you can see the cumulative or daily usage of your tokens and requests. And in my case, it's show in US dollars, but you can also break down on each day. So this is how you keep track on how you're spending your tokens and your API calls. You have all those shown here on the rate limits. So be sure to choose a model that has enough tokens per minute and requests per minute to fit your needs. And also be sure to, if you have a paid subscription to ChatGPT, to OpenAI, to keep money enough to serve your application, because as soon as it runs out of money, you also have reduced number of resources to use.
All right, perfect. Now, another question from our chat. Does ChatGPT API support C Sharp?
Well, I think it supports pretty much any language. Most languages have ways to interact with APIs, so it's just a matter of seeing how you can call the APIs that way. They have very good documentation on how to call their APIs, and even some examples over here. But I was able to even call it from the command line on my machine, so I assume they have some way to interact directly with C# natively. If they don't, you can always make just REST API calls and get the response that you need.
All right, we have a couple more awesome questions here, Alex. Can I implement multilingual support for ChatGPT within my app? And how can I handle language-specific input and output?
So ChatGPT natively speaks most languages. I try to interact with it in multiple languages, and it works like a charm. So as long as you prompt in a determined language and ask for output in that language, it will understand that and output it correctly. So be sure to try out just to specify the language that you're working with and asking it to respond on that specific language, and you'll be amazed how good it is in multiple languages. Now, I'm Brazilian. I speak Brazilian Portuguese, which is a very complex language because we have so many different verb conjugations, and it still works like a charm. So if it works in Brazilian Portuguese, I'm pretty sure it will work in pretty much any other language you can think of.
Perfect. Now, we're running out of time, but we have one last question here, Alex. What data privacy and security considerations should I take into account when integrating an external service like ChatGPT with Back4App and handling user data?
All right, this is a very good question, and this is something that we have to discuss not only for ChatGPT, but pretty much with any other integration with third parties. So Back4App tries its best to make your data secure, safe, and private. So we encrypt data in all our servers at rest, which means when they are not transiting, and in transit. So at all times, your data is encrypted in Back4App. We enforce the usage of SSL certificates, so you can have all this extra security added to all the communications that you do to Back4App. Now, many times when you try to integrate to a third-party service, you end up not using or at least not checking if their side of security is also covered. So many times I get some clients trying to consume third-party services using only HTTP instead of HTTPS, which transits data without any kind of encryption, and this is a security breach right there. So the best way for you to ensure security on both sides is first check the documentation. I guarantee you in Back4App we have it all covered up, and we are even GDPR compliant. So for those of you who are in the European Union, we can meet the GDPR standards. So encryption on all stages of data, transiting data only encrypted, and have security very tight. But on third-party services is also something you have to check. Does your third-party service that you're consuming support data encryption in transit and at rest? Does it enforce the use of SSL certificates, and you're consuming their services using HTTPS, or you're just using plain HTTP without any extra security? So this is something you want to check if on the other side specifically it is also enforcing all the security. And the easiest way for you to get this kind of information is talk to the support services on that service specifically, or at least reading their documentation. Most of places will tell which security measures they have implemented in order for you to be sure your data is safe.
All right, perfect. All right, everybody. So time is running out. If you guys don't have any more questions for Alex or Allison, thank you, everyone, once again for taking part in our Dev Talk. For all of your questions, either through our chat box or that you send me via email or on social media. I really appreciate all of you guys, and stay tuned because in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a big announcement for you guys regarding our platforms.
Yeah. And remember, all the code will be available, so Gus will send you on the email and probably add some other links as well. But all the code that we produce today will be available for you to download, except by my API key, which I'm going to delete right after this webinar.